Well, it's not whose line is it anyway, because at least the points still matter. But it seemed like everything was made up today. And I've said this on this show before. I get very, very frustrated with petty little things like this in Formula One. I think this is what turns a lot of people off. Fernando Alonso, and I must confess, I didn't catch the immediate start of the race. I understand he took the lead on the start. So if he was out of position on the grid, if he was slightly forward or whatever, he gets a 5-second penalty for that. That's fine. I understand that. Alonso comes in, he serves the penalty, and they decide, well, the jack was touching the car before the 5 seconds was up. So we're going to tack on 10 more because you didn't serve your 5-second penalty completely 100% per the rule book correctly, even though the jack was really just touching the car. So, I mean, how much of an advantage is that anyway? But you still get 10 seconds, but we're not going to give you the 10 seconds until after the race is over, even though we could have given it to you within 35 laps of the closing laps of the race, or before your podium ceremony when you celebrated your milestone 100th podium with your team, when we could have let George Russell celebrate his podium if it's really his podium, because you're going to get the penalty. Oh, wait a second. Actually, we're getting a lot of backlash for this. Maybe we shouldn't have given you the penalty, so we're going to take the penalty back and give you back your 100th podium. I mean, it's just asinine. It's just absolutely crazy. And like I said, this isn't a new issue. I said this. I remember I was sitting in the Scott radio booth at Gordon College when I hosted my podcast there. This is going way back 4 or 5 years now. I think it was Brazil 2019 when Carlos Sainz got promoted to the podium after they penalized Lewis Hamilton. And we were just saying, you've got to penalize Lewis right away. If you're going to do it, you can't rob Carlos Sainz of the opportunity to celebrate, and McLaren as well, because they hadn't had a podium in forever at that point as well. You can't rob them of the opportunity to actually be up there on the podium, taking in the atmosphere, soaking it all in, and celebrating with the team. I know they got to take some pictures later, but it wasn't the same. It's not the same as actually getting to go through the ceremonies and go through the process there. So all this confusion, I think, again, it's stuff like this that turns off particularly casual fans that see a race result and see a car cross the line in third place. But because the jack was touching the car a little bit too soon after a penalty was already given, we're going to tack on 10 more seconds. But then a couple of hours later, after they protest or after there's backlash, we're going to take it back. It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
So based on, I think you make absolutely point. One thing I was very excited and waiting for was to hear what you were about to say, Ben, because I know talking in group me and stuff like that. I was just more confused. I feel like these keyboard warriors Mike Joy was talking about, I feel like that's who bullied the FIA into putting Alonso back onto the podium, because everything you saw on Twitter really did make sense. It was kind of asinine, like what you said. The fact that it took 35 laps or something along those lines to really figure out this penalty, even after him celebrating a historic moment, something we have only seen 6 times ever happen in the sport. So I can definitely agree with both of you in the sense where it was just like, what is going on? And then if they allowed Esteban Ocon to do that and then penalize him after, probably would have finished much higher than he did. So it kind of, you look back on it, like just inconsistency. I know we make fun of NASCAR for being inconsistently inconsistent in that sense, but at the same time, you look at the FIA and what they're doing in Formula One, you're like, oh, well, they're doing the same thing, just in a different kind of form. But
well, even if you agree with the penalty, I think Fernando even said it himself. You had 35 laps to put the penalty into effect, and then even after the race, I mean, I feel like there should be some sort of cap, like NASCAR has the 90-minute disqualification thing or whatever, post-race tech. Like, we particularly for the winner and for the top 3, because you're celebrating on the podium, if you can't make that decision within 5 minutes after the race, it's probably borderline enough that if it's going to take you that long, it's probably not worth penalizing in the first place. So that's just my 2 cents on that. But it's asinine to, just like you said, Matthew, continue to go back and forth in circles like this and give these penalties out this late and then take them back anyway. It just doesn't make any sense to me.